Welcome to the Artful Minds by the Atelier Magazine, where we plug into the pulse of creation.
Thank you so much, Malvika, for joining us today. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Malvika Mitra to all of you today. Dr. Malvika is a distinguished research scholar, an accomplished author, and a gifted poet. Through her published works of poetry, she has touched many hearts with her deep sensitivity and beautiful expressions. We are also proud to share that Dr. Mitra has contributed her powerful poem, Draupadi, to the very first issue of the Atelier magazine, a piece that has been widely appreciated for its depth and strength. Beyond her academic and literary achievements, Dr. Mitra is known for her humility and her genuinely caring nature, making her a truly inspiring presence. We are honored to have her with us today. Malvika, before we dive into our conversation, I would like to invite you to say a few words.
Hi, Abhirami. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. And it's a pleasure to join you and have a conversation with you. My very best wishes to Atelier, and thank you so much for bringing out my poem on Draupadi. And Atelier, you all are doing a beautiful work in the sense that you all are bringing together. You're giving actually a platform for artists and writers and poets and all forms of arts where they can come, they can express themselves. And it's such a good way because you have brought in not only one art form but various art forms. So it provides your readers a lot of exposure, and we get to know about the different forms of art and the samplings of the art forms. So it's a beautiful initiative. So my heartiest congratulations and best wishes to Atelier team, to you, Bina. Thank you once again for having me.
Thank you so much, Malvika. Let's now move on to our questions and hear more about your journey and inspirations. Uh, in your work, you explore the evolution of tribal identity. How do you see literature helping to shape and preserve cultural narratives?
Well, talking about tribal identities, there are right from the beginning, there have been lot of books which have been written about the tribals. There have been movies which have been, about the tribals. And in fact, the movie Avatar, which was the Hollywood movie Avatar, about which we all know, that was actually that is also a tribal movie because it is talking about about the how the original aborigines, the origin of America, is what the Navi tribe is all about. So tribals have always occupied a lot of space in literature, art forms, novels, fiction, and my particular interest in tribals was aroused by Mahashweta Devi's writings. Mahashweta Devi, she is a very famous literature from Bengal. She has written on the tribals. She has lived with the tribals for many years, and she has written short stories, novels, and she got many awards also for her contribution. And she has spoken about the tribals, the Santhal tribes in particular, and their connection with the Naxalite movement. So I had the good fortune to work on her, rather to explore and discover her very famous novella. It's called Draupadi. And in Draupadi, she actually talks about a tribal who was also a Naxalite. She's a dreaded rebel. And when I was working on that, I was actually doing editing that book, making it ready for the graduate level students. So when I was doing that, I saw how deeply the tribals are connected with their land. They're deeply connected with their forests. Many things which we city dwellers, we are losing a touch with. So in that way, they are deeply rooted. And the name Draupadi, it's a very interesting name because we have the great queen from Mahabharata, who is Draupadi. Then we have the current president of India, who is also a tribal, who is and our first tribal president of India, and she is also Draupadi. And then this Mahashweta Devi's main character, her name is also Draupadi. So I found a beautiful link, how they were displaced, And from being displaced, they lost touch with their surroundings. They were more than losing touch, they were rather forced to separate from their surrounding. They were their forest. And I now see an inclusivity happening in the society when, of all people, we have a tribal lady as a president, and the amount of success. So it shows a beautiful journey which the tribals can make, and their development, and the development can be inclusive as well. It need not be exclusive of their culture, of their identity, but embracing everything, their roots, their forest, their land, their language, their dance form, everything together, and they can still develop, still maintain their identity. So that's what inspired me to write Draupadi.
Thank you so much. I actually read the poem, and then, like, I had my own understanding and I deciphered a different meaning and all that. It was interesting. But again, now it's so interesting to listen from the poet's mouth how you felt it and what made you write. Moving on to the next question. How does your feminist perspective influence the themes you choose and the voices you amplify through your writing?
Well, the themes I choose are very women centric. As a woman, I feel, we have been given a space in literature only from the 18th century. Women writers have slowly, started making a space. Before that, it was dominated by the men. And we all know about Shakespeare. We all know about, except for a few, very, very few female writers here and there. Otherwise, nothing actually. And so what happened, as long as men was dominating the literary scene, it was their story that we got to know. We never our story, the story of us as women, our struggles, our growth. It hardly got featured, except for a few, very few, who could also see side by side. Because when we take up a novel like Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, it's only about men, and very few, no, I'm just giving you an example. I'm not, criticizing the great literatures from the past. I'm not, certainly not doing that, with all due respect to the literary genius and their great output and creativity. What I feel is that only we women, we have an exclusive understanding of our situation, of what our ancestors, our predecessors have gone through, what has been their struggle. Now, if we see, we don't have any struggle, hardly, very little. Actually, we are walking the red carpet. All the struggle was done by our predecessors, the earlier literatures, who have done the foundation, who have, given us the beautiful groundwork for us to now progress comfortably. So yes, women centric, definitely telling the story. And we all have a beautiful story to say, whether of our success, whether of our struggle. We all have something to say, and who better than a female counterpart? But again, the sad part is, I have also written a poetry about that. It's called Sisterhood. I question what is sisterhood about, because one sad thing that we see in society, not only Indian society, because I am more familiar with the Indian society, maybe to an extent even in the Western society, is that it is women who are trying to bring down the women. In the sense, rivalry, as we see between even, between two women, whether it is the workplace, whether it is at home, whether it is between the sister-in-laws, it can be in any form. Even the sibling rivalry between two sisters also can be quite bad. And also, we see the daughter-in-law struggling for space, the mother-in-law refusing to give the space. So there's always a conflict, and it's a sad part. Instead of supporting each other as sisters, as soul sisters, what happens quite often is that they try to pull down each other. So I think we, as women, we know about our need for empowerment. So our feeling, or rather, the need to have bonding as sisters. The true meaning of sisterhood is what we should truly embrace, to grow together as a tribe.
In fact, we all got together through that bonding of soul sisterhood. That's something we have to really think about, and then thankful about it. And moving on to the next question. You have written about powerful women in history. What parallels do you see between their struggles and those faced by women today?
Well, the parallels, are very, very wide apart. If I'm comparing the women in history with the modern women who are educated, who have financial independence, it's very different. And because they also have their struggles, but it is different. But the rural women who have hard, who have very little education, who don't have the financial means, their struggle is huge. So if you're talking about a parallel, I don't know. They had a different kind of a struggle because their society did not allow them certain things. Now, in the past, for example, on Sita, Sita had a lot of restrictions. While the goddess Sita, wife of Lord Rama, and she had to go for Vanvas, and a golden statue was uh, was put next to Lord Ram during the Ashwamedha Yagya. And now also, I find certain parallels in the sense because when we have yagyas today, okay, we do if the wife is not there, of course, not everybody has the means to have a golden statue. That's on a lighter vein. I'm not saying that, but even if I'm sitting next to the husband and it has happened to me, it's not, I was a little taken aback. It was my husband who was saying all the mantras. Okay, I was just as a silent spectator, maybe putting little rice, little flowers into the holy fire. So that's about it. So talking about traditions, yes, I think some progress has been made because I come across, in social media that there are women priests also nowadays. I've seen in certain states, I think in West Bengal, I think I came across a group of priests who are women priests, and who goes to conduct weddings and things like that. But yes, talking about traditions, we we have to come a long way. But our struggles as educated women, as women with financial independence, is also there, despite everything. Because I will tell you a simple example. Okay, when I was working, and not only me working, I'm sure many other women also, we have a feeling of guilt. Okay, like for example, if we are late from office, okay, it's getting late for my child to have her dinner. I'm not able to give us food on time. What will my in-laws think? And things like that comes to our mind. It's just a general thing which we all go through. But when the men, when they get late in office, do they feel similarly? Do they feel guilty? Maybe they feel guilty, but maybe not to the huge extent to which we women feel guilty, is what I feel. And guilt is always more for the women, and our society also has more expectations from the women. We also have to do like two parallel things: take care of the outside world if you are working, also take care of the home. Whereas our mothers, they only took care of the home. They did not have the responsibility of taking care of their of working in an office and things like that. So yes, and one good thing I see is that the younger generation, like 20 years down or 30 years down, they are much more forward going when this comes. Because men and women, I think they are at par. I see men sharing the responsibilities of home as much. They are fine with cooking if the wife is not around. They are willing to help. So I think the gap is closing up. But yes, a lot needs to be said and a lot needs to be done, especially in the rural areas, more than in the cities, where they are subjugated by their in-laws. They have dowry. They are deprived of education. They're deprived of proper nutrition vis-a-vis what is given to their male counterpart. So yes, long way to go.
That's really wonderful, and we really need to think aloud about this, and then maybe we should have a long conversation on this. But moving on to the next question, how do you balance emotional authenticity with historical and cultural accuracy in your creative work?
Well, historical accuracy and emotional connectivity. I try to think. I try to think, maybe, maybe what I'm thinking is not right, because my way of thinking as a woman in 2025 is very different from what a woman like Draupadi in Mahabharata thought in 3000 BC or 5000 BC. So it's very different. But I try to feel, I try to put myself in their place, share their emotional condition, and try to feel like, had I been in their situation, how would I have reacted? Or had I also not been like, perhaps they would have thought that way. Perhaps Sita would have felt good that Ram was loyal to her, and Lord Ram actually did not get a second wife or a third wife, which was a very common tradition, and instead he made a golden statue of her and put it next to him out of his love for her. But at the same time, she perhaps also could have felt that, did I really deserve the punishment that I was given? But there was no way she could challenge it. So she had to obey whatever was given by the patriarchal society, is what I feel. And even for Draupadi, for that matter, well, she had 5 husbands. She's the perhaps only famous woman in Indian mythology to have 5 husbands, and for which she is very famous. We all know her for that. But she was also a very strong and powerful and confident woman. She was a very and despite all those things, she was dishonored in the full court when her 5 husbands lost the gamble to Shakuni Mama. We all know that. So despite everything, she's still a woman, and no matter how powerful she was as a queen. And we all know, if we go back to history, perhaps we see the queens. Okay, we see they are so powerful, they are this, they are that. But when we actually look at the inside story, I really feel very sorry for them, because the queens actually, they had very little power. Even if they had to sign something, they needed to have the approval of whoever was who was actually ruling the country. They had very little say, whether it came to their dress, whether it came to their food, whether it came to whom the punishment has to be given, whom the favor has to be given. In fact, I felt they were the most, what shall I say? Um, they were the, what shall I say? They had to make a lot of compromises. Yes, so it was not easy. And I try to understand the emotional turmoil in whatever
That's right.
little way I can.
That's wonderful. No wonder I said, like, you have that caring nature that makes you put yourself into their shoes, think about it, and then talk about that. That's really wonderful.
Thank
Moving
you,
on
Abhi.
to the next question. In an age of fast content and fleeting attention, how do you ensure your poetry creates space for reflection and lasting impact?
That is a very difficult thing, because nowadays we see everybody more hooked on to their screen, whether it's their tab or their mobile. They hardly carry the book. There was a time when when you used to see everybody reading a book. Not everybody, of course, but people with a knack for books. They used to read books, but nowadays you get everything. Even the books have become digital. So we have EPUB, we have various, forums where we get the digital books. But time has also become a constant, because our lives have become so fast. We need to handle so many things together that sitting down with a book, taking out some time to read a book is not easy. And whatever little time they have, people just prefer to relax. They prefer to spend some time on social media, watch small reels, watch short films. They don't want to go into heavy literary stuff. But all said and done, I am still hopeful that books will not lose their value, poetry will not lose their value, and poetry has a lesser readership when compared to prose and fiction and novels. They have a broader base. Yeah, and maybe because people feel that poetry is more of a riddle, they don't understand. And it is true, poetry can be interpreted in many ways. So it is in a way a kind of a riddle. But I hope people will take out some time, and people will rather get some time in their life, take a little pause to see what is around them, to spend a few minutes, maybe just over a cup of tea, or at the end of the day, in the evening when they relax, just flip through a book and occasionally read a poem. That's all I hope for.
That's really good. But on the other side, when we see, there are a lot of people who are still continuing to read from the books. There are a lot of literary clubs and other things in different languages for different genre. Everything is still there. I hope that that's going to be something which will continue to happen. Like how the fashions keep changing, people will come back and then they'll see. If you see, there are a lot of authors, there are a lot of people they are coming up. So this is going to be a continuous thing only for. Yeah, I feel so. So next,
I
when
hope
we,
so. I really
it's
hope so.
time for us to move on to the rapid fire questions, a
Sure.
quick round. So, what role do you think poetry plays in expressing complex emotions?
Oh, it plays a very important role because we can hide our complex emotions. We can, say it in a different language, in a, in a way which, as I said a little while earlier, and it can be interpreted in many ways. So it can be done very well. Poetry I feel, is a better form to express emotions while still holding on to what we actually think without giving away much because it is a short form while compared to the prose form.
How has your experience as a news reader influenced your writing?
Well, my experience as a newsreader, I don't see much of an influence in that. But but when I used to read news for Doordarshan, one or two news like used to catch my attention. I still remember, how the pachyderms, the elephants, they were losing their homes and their lands, their corridors were encroached and development was being made. So some of these things stays back while most of it, we just read and we just forget. Maybe it
If
again
you had,
depends on the personality of, because for me, the elephants losing their corridor, that made sense for me. Maybe for somebody else, a girl getting raped or, some kind of a political event will have more relevance. Differs from personality to personality.
so if you had a chance to choose one book that had a profound impact on you, what would it be?
Well, I don't have one particular book that I can say, nor do I have a favorite author. But yes, there are a lot of books which I love and lot of authors who I love, both in Indian literature as well as in Western literature. So I like Tolstoy, I like Vikram Seth, I like Turkish Nobel laureate Orhan Pamuk, I like Rabindranath Tagore, yeah, a lot of them, in fact. I have done my PhD on Jane Austen, so not anyone. All of them had a very collective influence on me, and I'm very grateful to all of them and for all they had done so that we can tread the path easily.
How do you balance your academic background with creative writing?
My academic background plays a huge role in my creativity in my in the whatever I write, my poetry. I've also written a lot of book reviews. I've written a lot of articles in prose. So definitely, and it all started with my post graduation. When I started doing my masters, I did it in National University of Singapore. So when I was doing that, that was my first exposure to feminist literature. So that was an eye opener for me. I was like totally taken aback by because I didn't know, I thought like society as I see it is how society is. When I was exposed to feminist literature, then I saw what is hidden, what are the layers, the layers of what I say, subjugation, and how they were dominated upon, and the role of patriarchy. Then that played a huge influence. Until now, I have not got over it. I don't think I'm ever going to get over it. It's like deeply embedded in my psyche.
The last question. What is one unique aspect of your poetry that sets it apart?
Well, I think my readers should be in a better position to answer that than I. But 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 like most other poem, it I feel my poems also makes one pause and ponder and think, and I really hope that it will continue to do so.
And thank you so much, Malvika, for joining us today and sharing your insightful thoughts and then your feelings and your life, how the literature and poetry has, transformed or given insights. Of course, there's a lot of insights that we have also gained today. And of course, people who are going to listen to this interview, are also going to gain a lot of insights from you. Thank you so much once again for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Abhirami, and thank you, Atelier, and my very best wishes to all of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.